got what we needed. And we were super involved in sports and all that. So like growing up, we were taught, I also think that helped too, because it, like when we ate or how we exercise and stuff, he more geared it toward our sport. So it was like performance based, if that makes sense. So like, and that in turn never, I mean, we always had like normal body, you know, like nothing we were ever like, no reason to be ashamed of, but like he always just taught us like, you know, you're an athlete, like be proud of your body, whatever. And then taught us how to eat. So then when I switched over to and the aesthetic sport like bodybuilding, it was like a very easy transition. And then I think the biggest issue, especially with women today, is that like you have to separate yourself from like Heather the competitor and Heather's body normal.
That's
the biggest
huge issue.
It is.
It is. I think a lot of competitors, especially women, they identify themselves as just a competitor. And I struggled with that myself for a long time because I was so into the sport and I wanted to be like the very, very best. But at the same time, once off season rolled around and I started to gain that body fat, I was like, oh, this isn't good. Especially because I was personal training too. So I felt like I needed to look the part 24/7. And I think being in that mindset of like, okay, I'm a competitor. I'm, you know, a personal trainer. Like I have to look shredded year round. That almost is counterproductive.
Yeah.
Because then you fall into this cycle of, oh, if I slip up, I have to do extra cardio. Or, oh, if I slip up, I need to cut my calories for the next 3 days. 100%. Or anything like that. You didn't have any room to just live like a balanced life. Like you can be a competitor and you can be disciplined, but you also have to find something other than bodybuilding to identify yourself with.
100%. And like too, with that, like no matter like how you said, like if you eat, you slip up and then you do more cardio. Well, like too, being a woman, like you're supposed to have your body fat on you and your body's going to make you eat at some point. And then, so it's like you get in that like cycle. It really
that
is
binge
a
restrict cycle.
And I've seen it take out so many competitor, and it breaks my heart because that's like, there's so many things to stop that I just don't think that coaches nowadays, and not all of them, there's a lot of good coaches out there, don't get me wrong, but there's also a lot of bad ones, and they don't kind of warn the person or take
of what's going to happen.
Yes, like take those precautions to make sure and say like, listen, like you don't get into this cycle, because once you get into that cycle, it's very hard to get out of that cycle.
It's very hard to get out of, but also I don't think, especially first-time competitors, they don't realize the damage that you can do in that first month to like 6-8 weeks after your show. I mean, I've been there. I gained 30 pounds after when I competed in the Arnold in 2019. I gained 30 pounds within like 6 weeks. Because I fell into that binge and restrict cycle.
And it'll eat you alive. I don't know how else to say it, but it'll literally like consume you.
Right, because you don't know how to get out of it, and plus it's hard to lose that weight too. I mean, it took me probably a year, really? I would say, to get that weight off. Like I had to go through a period of off season. I mean, I was in off season from April 2019 all the way until February of this year.
Wow.
So for me to actually get into a normal routine, not worry about all that, and then go through a prep to strip all that off, to then reverse out properly, I mean, it makes a huge difference.
It does. And like, so not only is it like the physical toll of like the, binge restrict, mentally, it messes with your mind so bad. Like you have to get both your mental and your physical to like be normal,
right? For
you to even consider competing. And it's just it's such a bad thing that I really, any help that I can do, like any one girl that I can help not have that happen to, like is great. You know
I think that's a great segue into, again, why we want to start this podcast, is because I feel like a lot of girls, especially in the fitness industry, when they're struggling to either, ace their diet or come out and reverse, or just regular like lifestyle fitness, if they screw up and they feel like they're the only one and they're not doing it for some reason, you're not the only one.
No.
And I feel like a lot of times, like, women feel alone or like they're screwing up and they're much harder on themselves than they need to be.
100%.
And I think that's just human nature of being a woman. Like, you're going to be 10 times harder on yourself than what you
Guys,
need to be.
Do not understand. Yeah, it's just like how our minds work.
Right. And I think us, you know, talking about the daily struggle or like, you know, things that we go through just between fitness and work and life and trying to balance it all. And even giving like our tips as to what has helped us. I mean, obviously, like, we're still trying to figure things out. Like, we don't have it figured out by any means
at all.
But
I wish I did.
I think talking about it more and like sharing, you know, what's helped us versus like what has kind of hindered our progress in a way can help other people. And I think that's why, I mean, I know for myself and from what you've told me, like, that's why we wanted to start this podcast
100%.
was to, even if we help just one person, like through something small going on in their life.
And not even just competitors either. Like, the everyday girl, and especially with like fitness becoming really trendy, I think a lot of non-competitors also have this weird pressure on them. And at least that's what I've noticed with, you know, some of my friends and everything. They compare themselves to these competitors and they always ask me like, well, what can I do? And it's like, they want a competition diet. And I'm like, you don't want to compete. Like, you're not going to do that. So I think to bring awareness to the non-competitors or help them kind of get a glimpse into what a competitor does, so you can look like like be in shape like that, but maybe not take it to the extreme that a competitor does, because you can get your body to a certain point before you hit that extreme where all that kind of like that damage is done.
Right.
When a competitor, I mean, we can
Well,
all
people
agree.
also don't realize what complications come with being a competitor.
100%.
You know,
they don't.
And I'm not trying to over dramatize it because I don't. Anyone that's competed knows what I'm talking about.
100%.
If you haven't competed, then you're going to think I'm over dramatizing it. But there becomes a point in prep. I would say for myself, it's different for everyone, but I would say for myself, it's at about 4 or 5 weeks out where you feel like a walking zombie.
Oh my God, I'm 4 weeks out too. That's my 4 weeks.
You feel like a walking zombie. You feel like you can't get enough sleep. It hurts to walk because you have like no joint fluid whatsoever. Even being a bikini competitor, granted, we don't have to get as lean as like, say, a male bodybuilder or a classic physique person. By no means. But can you imagine what they feel like? I mean, they have to feel like 10 times worse than we do.
I mean, when I talk to my dad and he's like 3 weeks out, like, you can only talk to him for like 2 minutes. Because like his like brain like shuts down, you know, like it's like, what do you need quick? Like, you know, you lose like all normalcy.
Right. And that's what people don't realize is they want to look like a competitor, but they don't realize like the implications that comes with it. I mean, you're starving constantly. You're tired constantly. You literally just feel like walking death at some point. You don't remember things. Like, you don't remember anything. You misplace your phone. I mean, I do that now in off season, so I can't even say anything, but you misplace everything. I mean, you forget things that you need to do that like there is no question. Like, you have to do them. You forget to set an alarm. Okay, the rest of your day is screwed at that point.
100%, because you have a priority that you have to make it to the gym.
Yeah,
so
you have to make it to the
has
gym.
To be shifted
on the back burner. And I mean, let's be honest, you can't just miss work or be late to work. Like, that's what's putting food on your table.
And you have to figure out how you're going to get your cardio in, how you get your meals in. And like, that's what the biggest thing is. Like, I've had girls come up to me, like friends of mine that are like, okay, like, what do you do? Like, you know, I want to look like that. I'm like, okay, well, I'm up late sometimes till 1 a.m. cooking my food for the next day. Like, you have to give up stuff. You can't drink. You got to get sleep. Like, being up at 1 o'clock in the morning is not great. But like, sometimes I have to do that. But like, you need to prioritize sleep. You have to literally measure out stuff. And they're like, oh my God, really? I'm like, what do you think? What do you think? Why do you think I look like that?
Yeah.
Like, on stage. It's not because it's an everyday thing. And that's what I think that would help a lot more girls to understand the sacrifices that they would have to make so they don't feel as bad about not looking like that. Because I think they think that it's just something that they're doing it's, you know, like they're not good enough or whatever, and that's why they don't look like stage ready. And it's like, no, you you have other things in your life. Like, this isn't a priority for you, and it's okay. Like, you don't, if you have kids, you might, like, you have other stuff going on, and that's why you don't look like
fine.
this.
But again, that's where bodybuilding comes in as a very selfish sport.
It's
the most selfish sport that you can do. And it's because you have to give up, going out to fun things with friends and family and all that. You can't drink. You can't just go on a date night and be like, oh, I'm going to get, nachos and a pizza and all this fun like stuff. You can't do that. No. You have to prioritize sleep, so you can't stay up late, watching a movie with your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. 100%. You have to take into consideration, okay, I need this many hours of sleep. I need this, I need this, I need this. It's not about anyone else. And that's where I think it's very important to realize that, especially for new competitors, because I've heard it and I've seen it all the time, where these girls, they get into the sport and they don't realize how selfish it is, and then it takes a toll on their relationship because 100%. They didn't communicate with their partner. This is what it's going to take for me to get to stage and be successful, and they just 100%. Expect their partner to know that. Yep.
And I don't even think they fully comprehend. They see they see a nice picture of somebody on stage, and they're in a cute little bikini and heels, and they're like, I want to look like that. But it's
so much more.
It's so much more. It is. And, I just wish that you could almost... And, granted, with all this talk, I still think it's the best sport in the world. I think it is the coolest sport. It, transforms you in a way mentally that a lot of people, I don't care what other sport there is, on professional level or not, even on an amateur bodybuilding level, you just, it literally, every aspect of your life is affected by this. Your sleep, your eating, everything, your drinking, vitamins, everything, your stress levels, everything comes into play. Whereas if you're a professional footballer, you can eat whatever you want and still show up and be successful. You don't need all that sleep. You can stay up and party the next day and still play. Right. And okay. But this you can't. Your water, every single part of your life is controlled to get up on stage. And to me, like I said, I think that that's the coolest part, but there should be a warning label on especially girls. And I see it more in the bikini division than any other division. You need to have a warning. And I think coaches need to maybe vet the wannabe competitors a little bit better.
Well, I think bikini too, everyone thinks bikini is the easiest category, which from an outsider's perspective, or even someone who has competed in a different division, yes, it is the easiest by far as, muscularity. Yes. We don't need to be as muscular as every other division. However, over the last couple of years, and I know that you've noticed this as well, they are coming up with very, very specific criteria as far as too lean, not lean enough. This needs to be fuller. I mean,
it's the most complicated.
It is, because there's so many aspects from it. Like bodybuilding, you got to be the leanest and biggest. That's it.
Yeah, so it's symmetrical.
Classic, done. Same thing as bodybuilding, just with a tighter waist.
100%.
Figure and physique, I feel like they're almost getting similar at this point, but that's a whole other topic of discussion.
Yeah, exactly.
Bikini now is just, they have a certain look, and it's very hard to achieve that look. Getting lean enough, but not looking too dieted and not looking spilled.
Exactly.
So I think as far as mastering the bikini look, that is going to be one of your hardest things to do. And girls, and I've been there myself, where I'm like, okay, if I just get the leanest and the most shredded, I will win. Yeah. And that's not the case at all. That was not the case at all. That was my feedback at the Arnold, was I looked too dieted.
Really?
I looked way too stringy. I didn't look full. I didn't look anything. But for me, I was like, oh, I'm 103 pounds. This is perfect. Yeah. And mind you, I came in this past season at 107 for my first show and 110, and I placed better. I won. So it's not always about...
really good. Yeah, you looked really good at the North Coast.
Thank you.
Yeah. So were you 110 there, or were you...
I was 107 at North Coast. I ended up being 110 at Julie Palmer.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
I got my period the day before.
Oh,
Julie
that's
Palmer.
bad. I've been there.
Totally unexpected. I hadn't had one in like 3 or 4 months at that point. So I was like, oh, there's no way. And then
your body does some weird things.
it does.